I'm endlessly fascinated and curious about the world around us, about business, about politics, about the arts, about culture, developments, social issues, and the people. Most importantly, about the people that are shaping our future. Every night, I get the opportunity to have conversations, to dive into conversations with thought leaders, with change makers, entrepreneurs, politicians, and everyday heroes who unpack the ideas and stories that I think matter to all of us. What's the future of our economy? What's the future of our country? How do we build stronger communities? What can we learn from music, theater, sports, politics, the arts? How does policy shape our real lives? What does leadership look like, real leadership in today's environment? If it's interesting and relevant and topical and we're talking about it, you'll hear about it here at 6 o'clock on the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. I want to have real conversations, in-depth conversations. These are ideas we're sharing. This is the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. Thanks for joining me. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. So housing and real estate and the real estate markets and what's going on is something that we're all talking about because of, we're all just talking about it because we don't know what's going on. So I thought I'd check in with Olga Donchenko. She is a luxury real estate professional. She's with Remax, Barry Cohen Homes. She works in the sort of the mid-Toronto area. And I thought it would be interesting to check in with her and see how she got in the business, what her experience is, and what she thinks about the market. So Olga, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Brian. I'm excited to be here. I admire the variety of topics you cover on the show, and I'm excited to be able to contribute my knowledge, my experience to the listeners.
Well, my pleasure. So let's start out. Tell me how you got into the business. You're an immigrant to Canada, is that correct?
That is correct.
How long have you been here?
Canada. So I came to Canada, I was 16. I did my high school here, and then I did my undergrad and my master's degree here as well. Real estate was a part-time gig. When I went right out of high school, I went into my university and I saw everybody kind of getting their part-time jobs in Tim Hortons and McDonald's. I looked at real estate and I was like, hey, why not get a license and, just try to do it for family and friends. And I got so hooked on the transactions and meeting people, the emotions and the positive feedback that even after I did my degrees and went into the professional field, I've always wanted to go back. And then at one point, I just turned around and I said, I'm going to do this full time.
Fantastic.
Never look back.
What area of the city do you concentrate on?
I would say central Toronto. Everything south of the 401 would be kind of my area of expertise, but honestly, in 20 plus years of doing this, I went as far as Keswick for my clients. So, yeah.
And tell me about the market. What do you think about the current real estate market in central Toronto?
I would say it's definitely not an easy market to navigate. Whether you're a seller or a buyer, there's just so much noise. There's just so much you have to plow through. There's so much different information coming your way, and it's just very hard. It's definitely a market where there are a lot of opportunities. So if we look back 3, 5 years ago, people were jumping in crazy bidding wars. Buyers couldn't put in any of their conditions. Now it's a very different landscape for the buyers. However, we see that there's a lot of tension for the prices, so not a lot of sellers are eager to give big discounts. And so we see that it's taking much longer to sell real estate for sure, even though there's a lot more options.
I hear that the sales volume is actually up in July. Volume was down dramatically prior to then. Inventory is up significantly. Time on the market is up. Prices in condos are down. How are they in single family homes? Particularly, I think you focus on sort of the higher end of single family homes. Where are prices in single family homes?
So I would say we've seen approximately a 30% increase in transactions in July and about a 1 to 2, depending on the pockets, 1 to 2% price increase for detached. Yes, you are correct. We do specialize in primarily freehold properties and resales.
So why was the volume down? Why is volume now up? And am I correct that even though volume is up, inventory is up dramatically?
Yes, correct. And there's a lot more increase in inventory in the condos sector.
Okay, but what about single family homes? Is the inventory up in single family homes?
It is, yes. It is up. I would say the jump, the way we felt it within our team and what I'm seeing talking to a lot of other agents, I think it's coming from people coming into back from their vacations and cottages. A lot of people buy around this time because they want to move by September if they want to be in the new space for the school district. So we're seeing that. I think people are just maybe more hopeful. At least that's what I'm sensing. There were so many different changes happening over the last 6 to 12 months that people were just sitting on the sidelines, and we're feeling a lot more confidence, but it's still not where we would have hoped it to be.
So is it still therefore a buyer's market?
It is
And
very
so
much so.
if you're representing a seller, what's your advice to them?
With my sellers, pricing is the key. And I always tell them, look at all of your competition and price yourself at least 1 to 3% below them if you want to be the one to capture the buyer. Because when the buyer comes out and there's at least 10 options for them to see, they're not going to be able to see all 10. They will select 4 to 5. And so you really want to be in that pool where you're going to be the first one to capture that buyer. So pricing is the key.
And how much percentage below?
1 to 3% below your competition.
1 to 3. So that's not a big price discount. That's just a slight discount.
It's a slight discount, but you also want to be I guess, the best offering for the lowest price in order to capture traffic.
Now, I've seen some people that, lower price. And so I presume that they talked to someone like you that gave them either bad advice or they wouldn't listen to the advice and wanted to price high, versus other people that sort of price low and want to get bids that are above their bid price, and then they hold back bids and expect a whole bunch of people to come in above the bid. So what's your strategy? Do you price high and then suffer losses or reductions in price, or do you price low and hopefully get bids above the asking price?
So in today's market, I would say your best strategy is to price at market. Unfortunately, a lot of the sellers, they still can't come to the realization that their properties are worth less than, say, 3 years ago. So we are forced to kind of take it at a higher price. But once you go down that slippery slope where you've listed it high because they wanted to see how the market takes it, and then you're sliding downhill with price reductions, you actually end up taking longer to sell and you sell it lower than if you were to list it at market originally. There is another strategy that you mentioned where people on purpose underprice a property. So they'll underprice it 15%, for example, below market in order to provoke multiple offer situations. July actually showed us a lot more positive outcome with that strategy as opposed to previous 3 months. A lot of people in the last 3 months used that strategy, didn't land an offer, and then they had to just relaunch on the market new.
So, I see lots of these signs about, sold over asking. Is that good? Did they price it wrong? Did they price it too low? Is that like, why do agents like you brag about sold over asking?
It's a marketing strategy, I would say. I mean, you always have to question with those advertisements, you have to see where they started. So if they started below market price and they sold over asking, well, if they were 30% below market price, but they only sold it at 20% over asking, then technically they sold it 10% below market.
Okay. In addition, you think about price reductions. How do you manage a price reduction? I've heard some people say, once you start doing a price reduction, one or two, take it away from the current agent, take it off the market for 30 days and relist it with a new agent. What's the right strategy there?
So price reductions do work because they often let you enter a new fresh pool of buyers. So for example, let's say you were 10.1 or 10.3 and you didn't have any activity there. And then you speak to your client and you're like, hey, we should really be a 9.8 listing. You enter into a different market and a fresh pool of buyers. So that's why often a price reduction strategy does work. However, I would say in a lot of our conversations with our sellers right now, we actually roll the discussion of a price reduction into that initial conversation. Because as I mentioned, a lot of sellers, they really want to try the market at a maximum price, and you have to prepare them that likely that won't work. And then they have to So for example, we do a strategy where in 30 days we sit back down and we're like, hey, this market strategy didn't work. We do need to go with a recommended lower price.
So
So that's
some
what
analysts are saying that prices are down from the peak by 20 to 30%. And clearly in the condos, it might be that plus something more. I'm hearing stories of that kind of a reduction in Brampton, Mississauga, some of the 905. But I haven't seen that in central Toronto. What are you seeing?
I feel like Central Toronto, historically, I've experienced it to be a much less volatile market. So it does keep it a lot stronger. We did see there's pockets that we have seen significant price reductions, as you were mentioning, 20 to 30%. But there are also pockets, various projects, let's say we talk about condo building, condo complexes, which do keep their value because they're kind of always in demand just the way they are. It's a limited production kind of a condo. Not
Let's talk about selling strategies as well. Some people say you got to paint it, you got to stage it, you got to fix it up completely, and other people say no, you're just wasting money.
We are the one team that's actually opposed to staging. If you have ever talked to us, most of the time we do staging in situations when there's challenged areas in a property where a buyer would come in and they just wouldn't understand what to do with that space. Then as a resource, I do think that staging is a tool, but I don't think it should be used across the board. A lot of the time you come into a property, agents take out all the furnishings, bring these neutral furnishings back in, and the property uses soul. We've had so many situations where buyers, like full-on buyers, would walk into a staged property because let's say the seller insisted they wanted it. They didn't like the place. They're like, it feels too cold. We feel cheated because we don't feel any soul. We don't feel like a family lives here. We get everything out, bring back the original furnishings of the seller, get the same buyer back in, and they fall in love with the place because they feel like it's home.
Really, that's interesting. And so, the advice that you take down all the personal pictures and the personal artwork and stuff like that, you think that takes out the soul?
Correct. And this is not me speaking as an agent. This is the feedback we have received multiple times.
Fascinating.
People
Okay, let's
want,
switch and think about buyer. So if you're in a buyer's market and you're representing a buyer, what's your
yep.
advice to them?
My advice is not to wait. There's so much negotiation power. They can put a lot of I'm seeing the kind of transactions where buyers can purchase a property with a 60-day condition on selling their property, something that I have never seen sellers agree to in all of maybe one in the 20 plus years that I've worked here. So there's so much power that the buyer has. They just need to act.
And is there a typical number of houses you see before you should make the selection, or no, it's just chance if you fall in love?
Well, for us, we always meet. We have an initial meeting. We have a questionnaire. So you always start with the why. Why are they purchasing? Why are they moving? Because you really need to tackle the why. So as soon as you know what their why is, then you get into the perks of the must-haves. And then the number one thing that I always recommend is making sure that your client is approved, because you don't want to be taking out a buyer to see all these properties that they fall in love with, and then we just realize that actually their budget is lower than they thought they would be able to afford.
So when you say approved, you mean approved for mortgage?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
So they know exactly the amount of funds they're working with.
And do you have to know what area of the city that you're interested in, or no, you can sample a couple of different areas?
It really depends. Sometimes buyers come and they already know, and a lot of the time, first-time home buyers, they are not familiar. So it's very good as an exercise to select at least 3 different neighborhoods to take them out once so they get the feel, and then really zero into one.
This has been really helpful. We're going to take a break for some messages and come back in just 2 minutes with Olga and talk a little bit about the balance of the market, maybe a little bit about condos and what she thinks about outside of central Toronto. Stay with us, everyone. Back in 2 minutes. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. I've got Olga Donchenko with us tonight. She is a real estate broker with Remax Realtron Barry Cohen Homes, Inc. She specializes in central Toronto. I just thought it would be helpful to check in with someone expert on the real estate business to figure out what's going on. Condos. You also do some work in condos. Condos are, it would appear, really down and down dramatically. Some people are saying, 30, 35, 40%, and that there's something like 30,000 condos coming on the market last year and this year, and more inventory in the market than ever before. Is that all accurate or not?
It is. Some pockets more than others, but it is very accurate. In a way, it's a very good buyer's market. So if you are a buyer in Toronto and you can't yet jump into a starter home, for example, condo is an excellent option for you right now.
So in your area in mid Toronto, Yonge and Eglinton area, there's like towers of condos, and then there's also mid rise or even low rise, more boutique condos. And the boutique, my sense is, have larger unit sizes, and some have a bigger mix of 2 and 3 bedrooms rather than those condos at Yonge and Eglinton that tend to have smaller unit sizes and sort of predominantly studios and 1 bedrooms. What do you think the typical buyer wants today? What's your sense of the buyer?
So these condos, they target two different buyers, and I've actually recently over the year had a lot of experience. We've had quite a few downsizing clients, and for them, the boutique, larger units really appeal when they're looking for their condo. So all those condos that you're mentioning that are maybe 6 to 8 stories, the units are larger, there's less neighbors that you're sharing it with, they're really loving it and going for it. And it's a great alternative coming from a larger house into this relatively large, let's say 1,500, 2,000 square foot condo. So it's not just a jump. The smaller units, they appeal to young families, maybe young working professionals who just need to be on the subway line to be able to commute to work. So those are great options for them. Absolutely two different buyers.
And so you think today is a good day for a buyer in the condo business because of the lower prices?
Correct. Yes.
Some people are worried that it's in free fall and they just don't know, when it's going to stop and bottom out, and so therefore they don't want to buy. What's your advice to them?
Well, nobody has a crystal ball. Nobody can predict what the future is going to be. I always, when I'm working with my clients who are considering buying condos in today's market, I always tell them you have to make sure you're considering this for the long term. If you're thinking that this is something you can only live in or have for the short term, say when I say short term, up to 3 years, 1 to 3 years, then I say it's not a good option for you. You really need to buy the condo only if you can. It's great if it increases in value over the 3 years, but you are able to live there and enjoy it for the 5 to 7.
5 to 7. Okay. I understand that you're speaking at a conference called Mumbition, and your topic is perfection is the enemy. Tell me, what's Mumbition and why perfection is the enemy?
Mumbition is an exciting event. It's going to be happening on September the 12th. It's for women, catered to women. It's all around women who are trying to grow their career while having a family, having kids, and really balancing the two aspects of life. So we have 12 speakers there. I'm one of the speakers. I have the privilege of speaking about the topic, I should say, is as you mentioned,
Perfection is the enemy.
perfection is the enemy. I was going to say yes. And I guess I'm experienced it over many years where I would focus so much on getting something perfect before I start doing it that it would prevent me from acting. So I would love to be there and inspire all the women that are coming out that they should just stop focusing on being perfect, but start doing the work, putting things into action because the rewards they get, it's practically impossible to get something perfect, especially from the first try. So removing that notion, at least for me, really got me more successful, less stressed out, and just out and enjoying the process of often failures
That's
and not
great.
being hard on
Great.
myself.
That's great advice. Let me ask you though, if this is a conference primarily for real estate people, I've heard that something like 70 or 80% of real estate agents make only 1 or maybe 2 sales a year. That the vast majority of sales are done by the top or 20% of agents, and that with volumes down, there's going to be a heck of a lot of agents that are making very little money this year and last year and next year. Is real estate a good business to get into?
You, when you're getting into real estate, I think it's a most amazing profession. I love meeting new people. It's never the same transaction. It's extremely exciting, but it's very demanding. Often people think that real estate agents, there's, this myth that real estate agents just open doors. But in reality, there's a lot of work, there's a lot of communication and very long hours that go into it. It is very hard to get in a downward market when there's a lot of competition. But if you do get into real estate now and you survive the next 3 years, then you're going to be a killer agent for sure.
It's
So
got to
you
be
need to
tough
be prepared.
taking buyers out on trips and holding open houses every Saturday and Sunday. How do you manage that by being a mom and a spouse at the same time? It's got to be pretty challenging.
There's definitely a lot of juggling, and this is where the perfection is the enemy comes into play a lot. Half the time you're like juggling your kids in the back of the car seat while doing a negotiation of a deal. Sometimes you show up with a coffee stain to a listing appointment, and you're like, you know what? I'm here. I'm doing this. Yes, I have a coffee stain, but let it be that way. You just stay authentic, keep going at it.
So your advice to a young lady or a young guy that wants to get in the real estate business is what?
Make sure you get prepared. I would say you need to have some savings so that you can at least manage yourself for 6 to 12 months because you don't start making money right away. But the bills do add up because you pay desk fees, you pay brokerage fees, they do add up. You pay marketing if you have a listing. So I would say get prepared on that end. And if you are starting a family, if you have all these other responsibilities, make sure you get help. Ask for help.
Now, you've said several times you're part of a team. Why part of a team rather than doing it on your own?
You tap into everybody else's expertise. I always say, and I always applaud people because they're all unique. So you tap into all of the different expertise. For us, for example, we have a team that speaks at least 7 languages. So, for example, if you have a client where maybe the client speaks fluent English, but the parents have a challenge, we can tap into each other's languages as a resource to bring each other for the showing. So that's one thing that's amazing with our team. And then there's also different backgrounds that people have that come into play when you're at a table, and they always back you up.
I've had some
Sometimes you
people say pools are great, and other people say no, only 10% of the people want pools, so pools are a negative. I've had people say that you got to have more washrooms than bedrooms, and other people say no, it's a waste if you have more washrooms than bedrooms. What's your advice on what you want in a house?
I would say it really depends on the pocket and the neighborhood. You have to know your stuff. There are certain pockets, for example, when you're in a family-oriented neighborhood, let's say Lawrence Park, Lytton Park, even Forest Hill, we always say bathrooms sell because people come, they have multiple kids, they have to accommodate everybody, they have visitors. As soon as you move down, for example, you get into Annex neighborhood or you're in Yorkville and you're looking at townhouses, well, bathrooms don't matter as much, but perks like having an outdoor hot tub, it's very hard to squeeze a swimming pool in an Annex property, but if you do, that is definitely a selling feature. And one other item that has become very popular in the higher end properties is having an indoor elevator and a heated drive.
An indoor elevator and a heated driveway because
Yep.
people don't want to walk upstairs and they can't shovel snow.
A lot of people are now purchasing homes that are in like multi-generational. So they'll have their older parents, for example, living with them. So the elevator is a really big asset. And Canadian winters, nobody enjoys shoveling the driveway. So having a heated drive is really an asset.
So bottom line, it's a buyer's market, but don't wait because you've got negotiating leverage, and so hire you or someone like you and get out there and start looking.
For sure. If anybody has more questions, they can always reach out. I'm happy to answer.
Do you have a website that people should go to?
They can go to my Instagram. It's Olga Homes. It's very easy, Olga Homes, and I'm easy to contact. Or they can always call me on my cell 416-816-5510 or text. That's the fastest. And then we have our company website, which is Barry Cohen Homes, so they can see all of the team agents, including myself there.
Olga, thanks so much for joining us. This has been very helpful. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Brian. This has been fun.
We're going to take a break and come back, and I'm going to have some other comments on real estate marketing in Toronto right now. Stay with us, everyone. Back in 2 minutes.